23rd century was supposed to be humanity's golden age, not in the way ancient philosophers had dreamed it, not a utopia of perfect equality or frictionless peace, but something arguably more impressive, something real. Humanity had looked up at the stars for 10,000 years and finally, stubbornly, relentlessly clawed its way toward them. Mars was no longer a rust-colored ghost in the night sky. It was home to 40 million people living beneath pressurized domes that stretched for kilometers, cities of glass and carbon fiber where children were born, having never once breathed unfiltered air and considered that completely normal. The asteroid belt had been carved into mining corridors that fed raw materials to shipyards the size of small moons. Europa, Ganymede, Titan, each one a foothold, a statement, a declaration that the species that had once huddled around campfires afraid of the dark had decided collectively and permanently that the dark belonged to them now. The UNSC, the United Nations Space Command, was the spine of it all. Part military, part government, part the closest thing humanity had to a unified identity across dozens of worlds and hundreds of orbital stations. They built the ships that connected the colonies, enforced the laws that kept them from tearing each other apart, and trained the soldiers who stood at the edges of explored space, watching for threats that most colonists preferred not to think about. The Covenant War was a generation old now. The Flood, that nightmare of nightmares, had been contained barely at costs that still made admirals go quiet when the topic came up at formal dinners. Humanity had survived things that should have ended it. That survival had become a kind of identity, a religion almost, which is why in the early months of 2557, the mood across human space was something close to triumphant. New Carthage had just celebrated the launch of its third orbital ring. The colony on Reach, rebuilt painstakingly over 2 decades from the glass-fused ruin the Covenant had left behind, had recently passed a population milestone of 8 million, a number that made veterans cry openly at the ceremony. Earth itself was magnificent. 15 billion people, mega cities that consumed entire continental shelves, their upper levels piercing cloud cover, their lower levels descending into carefully managed subterranean networks of transit and industry. From orbit, Earth at night looked like a living circuit board. Every coastline traced in light, every mountain range haloed by the glow of civilization, pressing right up to the edges of the wilderness that humanity had finally, in recent decades, decided to protect. The UNSC Home Fleet was the greatest military force ever assembled by human hands. 43 warships permanently stationed within the inner solar system, including 7 Marathon-class heavy cruisers, a dozen Paris-class frigates, and the pride of them all, anchored in high orbit above the Yucatan Peninsula, the UNSC Infinity. 5.7 kilometers of layered titanium A battle plate, experimental energy shielding borrowed and reverse-engineered from Forerunner design principles, a twin magnetic accelerator cannons capable of accelerating a 3,000-ton tungsten slug to 0.4% the speed of light, and aboard her, a full complement of Spartan 4 super soldiers, the most lethally trained human beings the species had ever produced. Infinity was not just a warship, she was a symbol, the argument made in steel and firepower that humanity could not be broken. Admiral Terence Hood liked to say that Infinity represented everything humanity had earned. He said it at commissioning ceremonies and diplomatic functions and late at night when the weight of command made sleep impossible. He believed it completely. So did the 1,500 crew members who served aboard her. So did the hundreds of millions of civilians who had watched her construction on public feeds and felt, for the first time since the Covenant glassed reach, that the universe owed them a little peace. They were wrong. The universe did not deal in debts. The signal came from Reach's long-range detection array at 0347 hours, Earth Standard Time. At first, the technician who received it thought it was interference, a ghost pattern thrown by a rogue asteroid cluster transiting the outer system. The signature was massive, which was itself the problem. It was too massive. The computer flagged it as an anomalous reading rather than a contact because no known object, natural or artificial, produced a sensor return of that scale moving at that velocity. The technician ran a recalibration, then another. Then she woke her supervisor. By 0400, UNSC command was awake. By 0412, the word had reached Fleet Admiral Lord Terrence Hood aboard Infinity's command deck. By 0430, the signal had been confirmed by 3 independent detection arrays, and the anomaly had a name. Fleet. Alien. Inbound. The numbers that came back from the arrays were not numbers that made sense in the context of anything humanity had encountered before. Not Covenant remnants. The scattered Covenant factions that still operated in the post-war galaxy ran raiding parties of 3, maybe 5 ships, not Forerunner automated systems. Those were fixed in location, not mobile. What the arrays were painting across the tactical displays in UNSC Command's central war room was a formation of vessels numbering in the hundreds, possibly beyond 1,000. Dearranged in a pattern that spoke of deliberate military discipline and a level of coordination that required either sophisticated AI management or a command hierarchy of extraordinary precision. They were coming from the direction of the outer system, past the heliopause, accelerating steadily. At their current velocity, they would reach the asteroid belt in 6 hours, Mars in 9, Earth in 11. The first casualty reports arrived before anyone in the war room had finished their initial briefing. Outpost Tethys, a small military listening station at the edge of the solar system, went dark at 0438, mid-transmission. The last 17 seconds of their broadcast were a sensor officer screaming coordinates into a recorder that he knew no one would reach in time to act on. Then static, then nothing. The station's emergency beacon, designed to survive anything short of a direct nuclear strike, did not activate. That meant there was nothing left large enough to trigger it. Ganymede Defense Station Alpha reported contact at 0501. They had a full battery of magnetic accelerator cannons, a complement of longsword interceptors, and a garrison of 800 UNSC Marines. They requested reinforcement and were told reinforcement was en route, which was technically true and practically meaningless given the distances involved. Their last transmission came at 0527, 26 minutes of combat. An installation that had been designed to hold against a Covenant assault force for 48 hours lasted 26 minutes. At 0540, the alien armada entered the asteroid belt. The mining platforms there, civilian operations, thousands of workers, families, the people who had never signed up for anything military, had been broadcasting evacuation requests since 0500. Some made it. Automated freighters and emergency shuttles punched their drives to maximum and scattered in every direction, and some of those ships survived long enough to reach Republic of Distance from the destruction before it caught them. Most did not. The Armada did not target selectively. It did not distinguish between military and civilian, between armed and unarmed, between resistance and surrender. It moved through the asteroid belt like weather, vast, indifferent, absolute. Mining platforms that had operated for decades simply stopped existing. Distress beacons bloomed and died across the tactical display in UNSC command like sparks above a fire. Each spark was a ship. Each ship was people. By 0600, the Mars knew it was next. The 40 million people of the Martian colonies had been monitoring the situation since the first Ganymede reports. The Martian Defense Fleet, 8 ships, capable and well-crewed, commanded by Vice Admiral Aiko Chen from her flagship, the heavy cruiser UNSC Stalingrad, had already formed up in high Martian orbit. Chen was not under any illusions about what her 8 ships could accomplish against an armada that had reduced Ganymede Station to debris in 26 minutes. But she was UNSC, and the UNSC did not abandon its people. She positioned her fleet in the most defensible formation available, opened a channel to the surface to ensure evacuation of essential personnel was underway, and then she waited. The alien armada reached Mars at 0711. Chen's fleet survived for 41 minutes, which was 15 minutes longer than anyone in UNSC command had projected, and which was a testament to her skill as a commander and the courage of every person who served under her. The Stalingrad itself lasted until the 38th minute, long enough for Chen to ram her ship directly into what sensor analysis later identified as one of the alien formation's command vessels, an act that briefly disrupted their coordination and allowed 6,000 Martian civilians to make it off the surface in evacuation transports before the Armada re-established its rhythm and resumed its advance. Vice Admiral Chen's name would be on every memorial built after this day. On Earth, there was no longer any pretending. The feeds that had been cycling through careful official language about a developing situation switched to emergency broadcasts. 15 billion people watched the tactical maps update in real time. The alien armada, still growing in estimated scale as new sensor data came in. The initial count revised upward twice was 5 hours from Earth orbit. The home fleet was already moving to intercept, but the numbers were brutal and everyone with any military literacy could read them. 43 ships against 1,000. At 0730, Fleet Admiral Hood authorized the single order that UNSC Command had been building toward since the first report from Tethys. He recalled the Infinity. He gave her one directive: no parameters, no strategic caveats, no diplomatic language. Just 4 words delivered over a command channel to Captain Thomas Lasky on Infinity's command deck: defend Earth, all costs. Lasky read the order once, looked out through Infinity's forward observation deck at the planet below. The light-threaded coastlines, the blue curve of atmosphere, the impossible beauty of a world that 15 billion people called home, and gave his own order to the helm. All ahead, full. If you want to see more stories like this one, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character or crew you'd want to see face the next threat in the comments below. Humanity's fight is just getting started. The UNSC Infinity did not arrive quietly. She dropped out of slip space at 0847 hours, 11 minutes ahead of her projected intercept window, which was itself a statement about what her engineering crew had done to her drives in the hours since Hood's order. The slip space rupture she tore open was visible from Earth's surface with the naked eye, a brilliant white tear in the fabric of space, approximately 40,000 kilometers above the equatorial plane, there for 3 seconds and then gone, replaced by something that made every sensor operator in the home fleet's remaining ships stop what they were doing and stare at their displays. Infinity was enormous. Even people who had seen her before, who had watched her construction or served brief rotations aboard her, they tended to forget the sheer physical reality of the ship until they were close to it. 5.7 kilometers, the length of a small city, from the bow's forward Mac cannon housings to the massive thruster arrays at her stern. She was a monument to the upper limit of what human engineering could produce. Her hull was scorched in places from the engagement she had been pulled away from. Minor damage, nothing structural. And her running lights threw hard white lines across the dark as she oriented herself toward the alien formation now visible on long-range sensors as a vast, dense shadow moving against the stars. Captain Thomas Lasky stood at Infinity's command deck and looked at the tactical display and did not allow his face to show what the numbers were doing to him internally. The alien armada had been revised upward again. The current best estimate from combined UNSC sensor assets put the fleet at between 900 and 1,100 vessels. They ranged in size from something approximating UNSC frigate class, roughly 200 meters fast and numerous, up to massive capital ships that dwarfed anything in the human inventory. Angular and dark, their hulls emitting a faint bioluminescent pulse that sensor analysis could not fully explain. They moved in formation with a discipline that was almost beautiful in its precision, each ship holding its relative position with a consistency that suggested either an extremely sophisticated, automated coordination system or a command intelligence of extraordinary capability. The home fleet had engaged them 40 minutes prior. What remained of the home fleet was 19 ships. Lasky absorbed that number in silence. 43 ships to 19 in 40 minutes. The alien armada's weapons were unlike anything in UNSC threat databases. Directed energy systems that operated on a frequency that partially bypassed standard titanium A armor plating, combined with what appeared to be some form of accelerated plasma delivery that hit with kinetic force comparable to a Mach round, but at a rate of fire no magnetic accelerator could match. The home fleet had drawn blood, their Machs had cracked hulls, and several alien vessels were drifting. But the exchange rate was catastrophic, and everyone on Infinity's command deck understood that without intervention, the remaining 19 ships would be gone within the hour. Lasky opened the all-ship channel. "This is Captain Lasky. Every person aboard this ship knows why we're here. 15 billion people on that planet behind us are depending on what we do in the next few hours. We did not come to watch. We came to fight. All hands, battle stations." Infinity went to war. The Mac cannons fired first. Twin slugs, each one 3,000 tons of tungsten, accelerated by electromagnetic coils, running the length of Infinity's forward hull, crossed the distance to the alien formation's leading edge. in 1.3 seconds. The targeting solution had been computed by Infinity's AI before she had fully cleared her slipspace exit, refined continuously as sensor data updated, and delivered with a precision that represented the absolute pinnacle of human fire control technology. The first slug struck a capital ship amidships. The second struck a frigate-class vessel that had been positioned slightly behind and to the port side of the first target. The capital ship did not die. It lurched, its formation position breaking, its bioluminescent pulse flickering and then stabilizing at a lower intensity. Hull breach confirmed across multiple decks. Systems disruption detected, but it was still there, still functional, still dangerous. The alien ships were heavily armored, and while nothing absorbed a Mac round cleanly, these vessels absorbed it better than anything Lasky had ever fired at. The frigate-class vessel was simply gone. The remaining home fleet ships, rallying on Infinity's arrival, pressed the opening. 19 ships that had been fighting a retreating action turned and coordinated with Infinity's targeting data for the first time, their Macs cycling through reload sequences while Infinity's point defense systems came online and began engaging the wave of alien fighter craft that had immediately vectored toward the new arrival. Infinity carried 400 broadsword fighters and 200 Pelican dropships, and within 6 minutes of her arrival, the fighter bays were cycling launches at maximum capacity, squadrons pouring out of her hull in formation, their pilots already receiving targeting assignments from Infinity's combat AI. The alien armada suffered losses for the first time, not catastrophic losses, not the kind of one-sided devastation they had delivered at Ganymede and Mars, but real, measurable losses. Ships cracking open, formations disrupted, fighter elements intercepted before they could reach their targets. The combined human fleet, Infinity, and the 19 survivors created a defensive perimeter that the alien advance could not simply roll through. For 22 minutes, the battle was something approaching equilibrium. Not a victory, not yet, but not the massacre that had preceded Infinity's arrival. Then the alien armada adapted. It happened with a speed that was genuinely alarming. The alien formation, which had been pressing forward in its coordinated mass, did something that Infinity's tactical AI flagged as a significant behavioral change. It reorganized. Within 4 minutes, the hundreds of vessels rearranged their positions, pulling capital ships back and pushing the frigate-class vessels forward in a dispersed screen. The fighter elements, which had been engaging Infinity's broadsword squadrons in relatively conventional dogfighting patterns, suddenly shifted tactics, pulling back from direct engagement and instead forming coordinated strike packages that targeted specific vectors. Specifically, they were targeting Infinity's shield emitters. Lasky's tactical officer, Commander Sarah Palmer, identified it first. They've mapped our shield geometry. They know where the emitter nodes are. Lasky understood immediately. Infinity's energy shielding, the Forerunner-derived system that was her primary defensive advantage over conventional UNSC vessels, operated through a network of emitter nodes distributed across her hull. Each node projected an overlapping field that collectively formed the shield. Individual nodes could be damaged or destroyed, degrading the shield's coverage in specific sectors. A conventional attack simply hammered the shield uniformly, which was what it was designed to resist. But a coordinated attack that specifically and repeatedly struck the same emitter nodes, degrading coverage in one sector, then exploiting that gap was a different problem entirely. The alien armada had watched Infinity for less than 30 minutes and had identified and begun executing a solution to her primary defensive system. Redistribute power from secondary systems to reinforce the port-forward emitter cluster, Lasky ordered. Get me a rotation schedule for the shield nodes. Cycle them before they can establish consistent targeting solutions. And I want point defense priority shifted to intercept those fighter strike packages before they reach attack range. The crew executed, but it was a holding solution, not a fix. Cycling the nodes bought time but cost efficiency. The shield was drawing more power to maintain coverage while rotating, which pulled energy from other systems. Infinity was an extraordinarily powerful warship, but she was not infinite, and the alien armada was patient in a way that suggested they understood the mathematics of attrition as well as any UNSC admiral. The losses mounted. 2 of the surviving home fleet ships were destroyed in the following 12 minutes, overwhelmed by concentrated alien fire once the armada's reorganization was complete. 3 broadsword squadrons were reduced to combat ineffective status. Pilots recovered where possible, but gaps in the fighter screen that required constant reshuffling to cover. Infinity herself absorbed 3 significant impacts in her port-forward sector where the shield had been degraded, each one leaving structural damage that the damage control teams were fighting to stabilize. 1 MAC cannon was taken offline for 15 minutes when a power relay in its charging system was damaged by a secondary explosion from a near miss that had punched through weakened armor. Lasky stood at his command deck and watched his options narrow in real time. 17 ships remaining, Infinity's shields at 61% efficiency, ammunition reserves for the MAX at 73% and falling, fighter complements at 68%. The alien armada had lost perhaps 80 vessels, a significant number in absolute terms, meaningless as a percentage of their total force. They could sustain this exchange indefinitely. Humanity could not. The planet below was close enough now that its curvature was visible through Infinity's forward observation ports. Cities on the night side threw their familiar light upward into the dark. Somewhere down there, 15 billion people were watching the same tactical feeds that Lasky was watching, and they were doing the same math he was doing, and they were arriving at the same answer. Sir. Palmer's voice carried something careful in it, the tone of a person delivering information they have already processed and set aside in order to function. At current exchange rates, we have approximately 90 minutes of combat effectiveness before Infinity's shield system fails completely. After that, no, we're fighting on armor alone. Lasky did not respond immediately. He looked at the tactical display, at the alien formation, vast, organized, unhurried, at the 17 ships arranged around Infinity like a bodyguard that was running out of bodies, at the planet behind them that had no more defenders to call. Then he looked at the alien formation center, there, deep in the Armada's structure, surrounded by the densest concentration of escort vessels, massive enough that the sensor display rendered it in a different color to distinguish it from the capital ships around it. The command vessel, the one Chen had hit with the Stalingrad over Mars, the one whose destruction had disrupted the Armada's coordination for 3 minutes before they compensated. The one that everything in the alien formation's behavior suggested was the operational brain of the entire fleet. 3 minutes of disruption had allowed 6,000 civilians to escape Mars. Lasky thought about what total destruction of that vessel might accomplish. He turned to Palmer. "Get me Commander Lasky, get me the Spartan team leads, and find me every bomber pilot who's still flying." He paused. "I want Admiral Hood on the line. What I'm about to propose is going to require his authorization, and I need him to give it fast, because we don't have 90 minutes to debate it." Palmer met his eyes. She understood what he was thinking. She nodded once, professionally, and turned to her console. Outside, the alien armada continued its advance, patient, systematic, certain of the outcome. They had not yet learned to account for desperation. Admiral Hood authorized the plan in 4 minutes. That was fast, even by wartime standards, and Lasky understood what the speed meant. Hood had looked at the same numbers Lasky had looked at, arrived at the same conclusion, and recognized that the only variable still open to human control was how they chose to spend what they had left. A slow defensive attrition meant losing Infinity, losing the remaining fleet, and losing Earth on a predictable timeline. The strike plan was a gamble with worse odds on paper, but the only option that contained within it the possibility of a different outcome. Hood was a man who had survived the Covenant War by understanding the difference between a bad choice and the last choice available. "You have authorization," Hood said. His voice was steady. "Make it count, oh Captain." Lasky closed the channel and turned to his assembled strike team leads. The briefing took 11 minutes. That was all they had. The plan was straightforward in concept and brutal in execution. Infinity would push forward, not hold position, not continue the defensive posture that was slowly bleeding her dry, but drive directly into the alien formation at maximum thrust. Her max firing continuously, her point defense at full saturation, absorbing whatever the armada threw at her in order to close the distance to the command vessel. Simultaneously, every operational broadsword fighter, 261 aircraft, reduced from 400 by attrition, would launch in a full offensive sweep ahead of Infinity, engaging the escort screen that surrounded the command vessel and creating enough chaos and disruption to open attack corridors. Behind the fighters, 63 Pelican dropships carrying Spartan 4 fire teams and Marine boarding parties would push through any gap that opened and attempt direct assault on the command vessel's hull, cutting through, breaching, and destroying its command and control infrastructure from the inside. And behind all of it, the remaining 17 home fleet ships would maintain coordinated MAC fire on any alien capital ship that attempted to reposition to close the corridor. It was, as Palmer observed quietly to the officer standing next to her, the most aggressive thing the UNSC had attempted since a Spartan had walked into a Covenant holy city with a nuclear weapon strapped to his back. The Spartans, when they received their mission briefing, did not appear to find it unreasonable. Infinity accelerated at 0931 hours. She had been holding at approximately 40,000 kilometers from the alien formation's leading edge, maintaining the defensive perimeter that was slowly failing. When her drives went to full military power, the thrust signature was visible to naked eye observation from Earth's surface, a hard blue-white point of light suddenly brightening and moving, trailing a drive plume that stretched for kilometers behind her. Every sensor operator in the alien armada would have registered the change immediately. They would have understood that the human flagship was no longer retreating. What they did with that understanding became apparent within 90 seconds. The alien formation contracted. The dispersed screen of frigate-class vessels that had been executing the coordinated shield targeting attacks pulled inward, densifying the protective layer around the capital ships and, critically, around the command vessel at the armada's center. Additional fighter elements, hundreds of them, alien craft that moved with an aggressive agility that had cost Infinity's pilots dearly in the preceding hours, surged forward to intercept. The alien capital ships that had been positioned at the formation's flanks began repositioning, angling to bring their weapons to bear on Infinity's projected approach vector. The armada was not panicking, it was preparing. Palmer watched the repositioning on her display and said nothing for 3 seconds. Then, "They know what we're doing." "Yes," Lasky said. "They'll launch the fighters." 261 broadswords hit space in a coordinated wave that took 4 minutes to fully clear the bays and form up, which was faster than any previous combat launch in Infinity's operational history. A record born entirely from the knowledge that 4 minutes was a long time when the mathematics of survival were this tight. The pilots who flew them were the best the UNSC had, and in the hours of fighting that had preceded this moment, they had learned things about alien flight behavior, weapons patterns, and tactical tendencies that no training simulation had prepared them for. They had paid for that knowledge in blood and empty seats in the pilot briefing room. Now they spent it. The fighter engagement that erupted across the 1,000 kilometers between Infinity's advancing hull and the alien command vessel's position was the largest space combat action in human history. It was also, from any objective observational standpoint, extraordinarily violent. The alien fighter craft were faster in open maneuvering, and their directed energy weapons hit harder at close range than the broadsword's autocannons. The human pilots were more accurate, more tactically flexible, and operating with the accumulated knowledge of everything they had learned in the hours prior. Neither side had a clean advantage. Both sides took devastating losses. The space between Infinity and her target became a three-dimensional killing ground of burning hulks, emergency ejections, and the constant crossing light lines of weapons fire. Infinity drove through it. Her Mac cannons fired in continuous rotation, not the measured, aimed shots of a ship conserving ammunition for a long engagement, but a sustained barrage designed to force the alien capital ships, repositioning to close her corridor to instead focus on surviving. Each shot was a 3,000-ton slug moving at relativistic speed, and while the alien capital ships were heavily armored, nothing shrugged off a Mac round without consequences. 3 alien capital ships were destroyed outright in the first 12 minutes of the advance. 4 more were damaged severely enough to abort their repositioning. The corridor stayed open, barely, expensively, but open. Infinity took punishment in return that was genuinely severe. The shield, already degraded to 61% efficiency, had dropped to 43% in the first 8 minutes of the advance as the alien armada concentrated fire on the approaching human flagship with a focused intensity that set off damage alerts across multiple decks simultaneously. 2 more emitter nodes failed despite the cycling protocols, leaving a sector of Infinity's ventral hull covered only by armor. An alien capital ship one of the larger ones, its weapons clearly more powerful than the frigate-class vessels that had been doing most of the engagement work, managed to hold its position long enough to fire a sustained energy beam that tracked across Infinity's port side for 6 seconds before the Mac barrage forced it to break off. That 6 seconds of sustained fire burned through armor plating on 3 consecutive decks, killed 41 crew members, and compromised a section of the port fighter bay, which had to be sealed and vented. The Spartans were already in their Pelicans. The boarding element launched at 0958 hours, when Infinity had closed to approximately 8,000 kilometers from the command vessel, and the fighter engagement had created, through attrition and aggression and the deaths of 112 broadsword pilots, something that resembled a viable approach corridor. 63 Pelicans, each one carrying between 8 and 12 personnel. The Spartan fire teams were distributed across 6 lead Pelicans, designated to make first contact with the command vessel's hull, while Marine boarding parties in the remaining craft provided follow-on assault capability. The Pelicans flew through a battle that was actively trying to kill them, but alien point defense systems tracked them immediately. The first 2 Pelicans were destroyed before they had covered half the distance. Direct hits, nothing left. Gone between one sensor ping and the next. A third was damaged severely enough that its pilot diverted away, unable to maintain approach vector. Infinity's point defense systems, now fully committed to protecting the boarding corridor rather than Infinity's own hull, engaged everything that moved toward the Pelican formation, and the broadswords that were still flying shifted priority to escort, protecting the transports at cost to themselves. 58 Pelicans reached attack range of the command vessel. The command vessel was enormous, larger than anything the UNSC's combined intelligence assets had managed to fully characterize in the hours of sensor observation since the Armada's arrival. Its hull was dark, organic in its curves, studded with weapons emplacements that were now firing continuously into the approaching boarding element. Its surface up close showed a complexity of structure that spoke of engineering entirely unlike anything in human experience. Not welded plates and modular components, but something that looked almost grown, integrated, as if the ship had been built from the outside in rather than assembled from parts. The lead Spartan Pelican, call sign Actual One, reached the hull at 1009 hours. The Spartan team that went through that breach were 6 individuals who had, between them, accumulated more combat experience than most military units accumulated in a generation. They moved through the alien vessel's interior with the focused efficiency of people who had been trained to operate in exactly this kind of environment: unknown layout, hostile contact, zero margin for error. The interior of the command vessel was dark by human standards and lit by the same faint bioluminescence that characterized the hull's exterior, illuminating corridors that were sized for beings slightly larger than humans and shaped with a flowing geometry that made tactical movement challenging. The aliens they encountered, and they encountered them immediately, resistance was immediate and fierce, were formidable, faster than expected, more organized than hoped. The Spartans were faster and more organized than anything the alien crew had ever been designed to stop. Behind Actual One, 34 more Pelicans successfully breached and began deploying Marine boarding parties into the command vessel's interior, turning what had been a Spartan entry operation into a full assault across multiple vectors. The aliens defending the interior were fighting with genuine discipline, falling back through the vessel's corridors in coordinated patterns, sacrificing forward positions to preserve something deeper in the ship, something they were protecting, pulling all resistance toward a central location that every boarding team's movement was beginning to triangulate. The command center, the brain of the entire armada. Outside, Infinity was 3,000 kilometers from the command vessel and closing. Her max still firing, her shields failing sector by sector, her crew fighting damage and fire and vacuum breaches with the systematic ferocity of people who understood that stopping meant dying. The alien armada was pressing its attack on the human flagship with everything it had. And everything it had was immense. But the presence of boarding teams inside the command vessel had introduced a complication the Armada's tactical logic had not fully accounted for. It could not fire its most powerful weapons at Infinity without the risk of targeting solutions that brought those weapons close to its own command vessel. That hesitation, brief, partial, tactically understandable, was the 3 minutes that humanity needed. Actual One reached the command center at 117 hours. The command center of the alien flagship was a cathedral of foreign engineering. That was the first coherent thought that passed through Spartan Alexis Vance's mind when Actual One breached the final sealed bulkhead and the room opened before them. Not a tactical assessment, not a threat calculation, but something closer to involuntary awe that she processed and set aside in approximately half a second before her training reasserted complete control. The space was vast, circular, rising 40 meters to a vaulted ceiling that pulsed with the same bioluminescent light that ran through the entire vessel, but concentrated here into something that felt almost intentional, almost ceremonial. The floor was a continuous display surface showing the entire battle in real time. Infinity's position, the home fleet survivors, every broadsword still in the fight, every alien vessel, every boarding team's beacon rendered as a pulsing point of light in a three-dimensional map that covered the entirety of near-Earth space. Standing around its edges, working at interfaces that responded to touch and gesture and what appeared to be some form of directed sound, were alien crew members, unlike any they had encountered in the corridors below. These were not soldiers. These were commanders, larger, differently armored, moving with an authority that was immediately readable across every barrier of biology and culture. They turned when the bulkhead came down. 12 aliens in a command center that had just been breached by 6 Spartans. The math was not in the aliens' favor, and the aliens understood that within approximately 2 seconds of seeing what had come through their wall, what followed was not a battle, it was a reckoning. Vance's team moved through the command center with a precision that the tactical situation demanded and their training had made automatic. The alien commanders were not unarmed. The weapons they carried were powerful, and 2 Spartans took hits that would have killed unaugmented soldiers. The impacts absorbed by Mjolnir armor and genetically enhanced physiology that had been purpose-built for exactly this kind of punishment. But the Spartans had been fighting through this vessel for 8 minutes by the time they reached this room, and in those 8 minutes they had learned everything they needed to know about alien reaction time, weapon discharge patterns, and the approximately 3/4 of a second window that existed between an alien commander beginning a targeting movement and completing it. 3/4 of a second was an eternity to a Spartan. The command center was secured in 90 seconds. Vance was already at the central interface before the last contact was down. Her helmet's AI system, a smart AI partition designated Felix, that had been running translation algorithms against alien communication intercepts since the Armada's first appearance, working against the interface at a speed that turned what should have been an impossible problem into a merely brutal one. The interface responded to physical interaction. It could be operated without understanding it completely, and what Vance needed to do did not require her to understand the vessel's entire operating architecture. It required her to find the power systems, find the weapons coordination network, and introduce a catastrophic failure to both. "Felix," she said. "Working," the AI responded. 40 seconds. Outside the command vessel, Infinity was taking the worst punishment of the engagement. The alien armada, sensing that something had changed inside its flagship, the communication silence from the command center, the sudden irregularity in coordinating signals, the boarding beacons that its sensors could now track through the command vessel's hull, had abandoned its tactical restraint entirely. The hesitation that had bought humanity 3 minutes was gone. Capital ships that had been holding back to avoid endangering the command vessel were now pushing forward their weapons at full output. It directed at Infinity with a focused desperation that mirrored in its own alien way the desperation driving everything on the human side. Infinity's shields failed completely at 1021 hours. All sectors, total failure. The last emitter node in the ventral cluster took a direct hit from a sustained energy beam, and the entire shield network collapsed in a cascade that Infinity's engineers had been fighting to prevent for the last 40 minutes. What remained between Infinity's crew and the alien armada's weapons was Titanium A battleplate, extraordinary armor by any human standard, meaningful protection against conventional weapons, and insufficient against what the alien capital ships were now delivering at close range. Lasky watched the shield status indicator go dark across his entire display board and said nothing for 1 second. "All remaining max," he said then. "Continuous fire, everything we have." The crew of the UNSC Infinity, shields gone and armor taking fire on 6 sectors simultaneously, continued to fight. In the command vessel, Felix said, 10 seconds. Vance had her hand on the interface. Around her, the 5 other Spartans of Actual One held the room against the alien soldiers pressing through every access corridor. The sound of the fight outside the command center, a constant percussion of weapons fire, and the particular resonant crash of Spartan-grade combat in enclosed spaces. 2 of her team were hurt, not critically, but hurt. The Marine boarding parties in the decks below were still fighting their way up. The 30 minutes of brutal corridor-by-corridor combat having gotten them most of the way to the command center's level, but not yet through the final defensive line the alien crew had established. Actual One had gotten here first because Spartans got places first. That was what they were. 3 seconds, Felix said. Vance thought briefly and without sentiment about the 41 crew members who had died in the portside armor breach, about the broadsword pilots whose ejection systems had activated over a battlefield where no recovery was possible, about Vice Admiral Chen ramming the Stalingrad into an alien vessel over Mars because it was the only weapon she had left, and 6,000 people needed 3 more minutes to escape. "Execute," she said. The alien command vessel died from the inside out. The power cascade that Felix introduced into its systems was not an explosion in the conventional sense. It was a controlled, deliberate overload that moved through the vessel's integrated architecture in a wave, each system's failure feeding energy back into the next. The bioluminescent light that had characterized every surface of the ship, flaring to blinding white before going completely dark. The weapons emplacements on the hull stopped firing, the maneuvering systems locked, the communication arrays went silent, and then, 11 seconds after the cascade began, the vessel's core power system, whatever it was, whatever principles governed it, Felix had characterized it as a contained energy source of extraordinary density, reached a failure threshold that released its stored energy in a single catastrophic event. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface in daylight. It registered on every sensor array in the solar system as an energy spike that briefly overwhelmed detection equipment designed to observe stellar phenomena. The shockwave it produced crossed 50 kilometers in every direction in under a second, and the pelicans that had not yet breached the hull, holding at distance waiting for boarding corridors that were never going to open, were thrown tumbling by the pressure front before their pilots recovered control. Actual One had already left through the breach they had entered by. Vance was in her Pelican, her team around her, 6 Spartans and a partitioned AI that had just helped destroy the most powerful alien vessel humanity had ever encountered when the command ship's core let go. The shockwave hit the Pelican hard enough to throw everyone who wasn't strapped in against the cabin walls, which was everyone except Vance, who had both hands locked on a structural brace and absorbed the impact through Mjolnir's joints with the focused calm of someone who had survived worse. She watched through the Pelican's small viewport as the alien command vessel collapsed inward and then ceased to exist. Then she watched something she had not dared to anticipate. The alien armada stopped. It did not stop elegantly. It did not stop in unison. It stopped the way a body stops when the brain stops. In pieces, systems going offline in irregular sequence, the coherence that had made it terrifying dissolving into something disorganized and therefore, for the first time since Tethys had gone dark, manageable. The capital ships that had been pressing their attack on Infinity broke off, their movement patterns losing the precise coordination that had characterized every alien maneuver since first contact. Frigate-class vessels that had been maintaining the screen began drifting out of formation. Fighter elements that had been executing their strike packages against the broadsword screen aborted their runs and began pulling back toward the larger vessels. Lasky watched it happen in real time on his tactical display, one hand on the command rail, saying nothing. Infinity's Max continued to fire for 90 seconds after the command vessel's destruction, targeting the largest remaining capital ships with shots that were now finding marks that were no longer maneuvering evasively. 3 more alien capital ships were destroyed in those 90 seconds. Then Lasky gave the order to hold fire, not because the threat was gone, but because he wanted to watch, needed to watch, and confirm what the display was telling him. The alien armada was retreating, not routing, not the panicked scatter of a force that had broken, but retreating with a deliberateness that suggested the remaining ships had reverted to some form of autonomous or subordinate command structure that prioritized preservation over objective completion. They were pulling back toward the outer system in a formation that was looser than anything they had maintained during the battle, but still a formation, still organized, still in some sense controlled. Within 40 minutes they had cleared Earth orbit. Within 3 hours they had passed the asteroid belt. Within 6 hours, they were gone from every sensor array in the solar system, their drive signatures fading past the heliopause into the dark beyond. Earth was quiet in the aftermath, in the way that only places that have just survived something unsurvivable can be quiet, not peaceful, not relieved, not yet, but suspended in the particular silence of 15 billion people processing simultaneously that they were still alive. Infinity hung in orbit, her hull scorched and breached in 17 places, her shields offline, her fighter complement reduced to 114 operational aircraft from the 400 she had launched with. The remaining home fleet, 11 ships now, 6 more lost in the final stages of the engagement, formed up around her in positions that were part tactical formation and part something that looked, from a distance, like gathering around something that needed to be protected. The dead numbered in the thousands. Station crews, colony workers, Marines, pilots, sailors, Spartan candidates who had not yet finished their augmentation and had fought anyway because that was what you did. The memorials would come later. The grief would come later. For now there was the work, the damage assessments, the rescue operations, the search for survivors in the debris fields that stretched from the asteroid belt to Martian orbit, the quiet accounting of what had been spent and what remained. Lasky stood at Infinity's forward observation deck for the first time since the battle began and looked at Earth below him. It was still there. He allowed himself 15 seconds to feel what that meant. Then he turned back to his bridge. The alien data cores recovered from the command vessel's wreckage. Fragments mostly, salvaged by recovery teams in the hours after the battle. Their contents partially corrupted by the destruction, but partially intact, in ways that Felix worked through the following 36 hours to decode, did not contain everything. They were not a complete intelligence picture. They were pieces of something larger, edges of a document whose full text remained unknown. And what they contained was enough to make the analysts who reviewed Felix's translations go very quiet for a very long time. The armada that had come to Earth, 900 vessels, the largest military force humanity had ever faced. The fleet that had destroyed Ganymede Station and the Martian Defense Fleet and killed Vice Admiral Chen and cost Infinity her shields and 41 crew members in a single armor breach, was designated in the recovered data by a term that Felix rendered, with appropriate uncertainty about the translation, as something approximating forward element or advance reconnaissance in force. A scouting fleet. Not the main body, not the invasion force, not whatever was behind it, waiting in the dark beyond the heliopause for whatever signal the advance element had been supposed to send back. Lasky read the translation twice. Then he forwarded it to Admiral Hood, with a single line appended. "We need to talk about what comes next." Hood's response came back in 4 minutes, which was fast, and which told Lasky everything about what Hood had understood when he read it. "Already convening. Get Infinity repaired. We're going to need her. Across the solar system in the debris fields and the damaged stations and the rebuilt colony on Reach and the mega cities of Earth. whose light still burned against the dark, humanity began the work of counting its losses and preparing for what the recovered data made clear was not an ending, it was an interval. The aliens would come back, in greater numbers, with the full weight of whatever civilization had built that armada, carrying the knowledge of everything their advanced fleet had learned before it died. They would come back and they would know about Infinity, about the Mac cannons and the Spartans and the desperation strategy that had cost them their command vessel and sent 900 ships retreating into the dark. Humanity had 11 ships, one flagship, a corps of Spartans, a species worth of stubbornness that had survived the Covenant and the Flood, and every other thing the universe had thrown at it, and was still, somehow, here. It would have to be enough. In the orbital repair dock above Earth, the work of rebuilding Infinity had already begun. In the recovered data Felix continued to process, deeper in the files than the fleet designations and the tactical assessments, was something the AI had flagged with a priority marker and a note that said simply, "You need to see this, a navigational record, coordinates, a point in space beyond the edge of explored territory, beyond the heliopause, beyond everything humanity had mapped or imagined, the place the armada had come from, the place it had returned to." Lasky looked at those coordinates for a long time. Then he looked at Infinity's repair schedule. Then he looked at Earth below him one more time. The lights, the curve of atmosphere, the blue that meant water and life and 15 billion reasons, and made a decision that he did not yet speak aloud, but that had already, in the making, become inevitable. They would not wait for the next fleet to come to them.